Welcome back to Cologne. Sounds like you left or whatever. How was the dinner yesterday? How was the... Beside for Lex, that was like really crazy for a burger and like like Googling around like a... So you visited Hans im Glück. Yeah. I was just saying Glück means actually luck in German, and that animal surely didn't have any luck. Anyway, let's restart today with Robin that we saw yesterday already, and and so when so that's funny because when I was calling with Robin, that's what you get for having all the bullet points showing at once. Whatever, we'll keep it this. I was like, can we screen the movie? She said, yeah, sure, but it appears you don't have any female speakers. I was telling her, well, it's not like I didn't try it. I tried about 8 or something. I actually counted. I'm not going to name them, but sure enough, anybody had a good excuse or whatever not to come. So I was, and then I was like, but yeah, but my traveling budget has kind of already exploded because I have 4 people coming outside. But sure enough, she told me, oh, but you know, actually, I will be in Europe anyways, so I might just hop over. And I was like, yeah, come over. So she's coming all the way from San Francisco, and the whole flying cost was pretty cool. So it's pretty awesome. I'm a little bit sad that Stacy couldn't be here, but I was happy to meet Stacy Hartman in San Francisco, and so I'm really excited to see. What the talk is going to be today about, because we all saw the movie yesterday, and so, what? You have a question? Okay, she's the producer, exactly. Yeah. But I would have figured out, Scott, that you would have looked at the wonderful website that I spent so many years building, and but anyways, yeah. There's a website, yeah, right. There's even an app for that, Any other question? Are you guys going to shout at me for the next hour or so? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Robin again.
Thank you. So I've never actually given a talk when the people have seen the film beforehand, so I think this will be interesting. So last night I got home and changed it up a little bit. So that you wouldn't be bored and see too much of what you saw last night. But it's fun to be able to have the opportunity to go a little bit deeper and to try to direct this a little bit more at my sense of what interests you. First, I'll just tell you about the motivation behind this. As you know, I am not a woman in tech. I took a basic class in college, which was a long time ago. But I'm just a woman that made a film about women in tech because it interested me. And the reason it interested me was that my daughter, who you see there, was studying computer science in college at the university, a university in upstate New York. And she was always very confident with her academics. And suddenly she began to call home and she said, Mom, I'm just one of 2 girls in a class of all boys. She said, they know so much more about all of this than I do. It's a beginning level class. I said, well, just hang in there. You'll be okay, stick with it. A month or so later, she called back and she said, Mom, you don't get it, I'm failing. I said, I highly doubt you're failing, go talk to your professor. So she talks to her professor, he said, you're in the top third of your class. You're doing fine, stick with it. She then called home a few months later and said, Mom, you don't understand, I hate this. And I said, okay, I have one question for you. If you were getting an A, would you like computer science classes more? Well, yeah, of course, she said to me. So at the same time, international newspapers were coming across this Wall Street Journal saying things like this. Sorry, college grads, I probably won't hire you. If you don't have some computer science background, some classes and knowledge of coding, of computer science languages, you're not going to get a job, especially in the United States, or at least in a business sense. And then the White House issued a report that said by the year 2020, there would be 1.4 million computer science jobs in the United States, and only 400,000 computer scientists. So 5 years from now, that's 1 million unfilled jobs in the US. It's a similar problem in Europe. So what's happening is we're missing half the population. That's why we can't fill these jobs. People of color and women aren't taking the tech jobs. Just to show you sort of some of the imbalances in companies, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, and Apple. Apple claims to have 20% women in tech roles. Of course, you know that defining exactly what a tech role is, and what we tried to do is get the numbers of exactly how many women were coding or programming. I looked up to see if this was a problem in Europe too, in Germany, and it looks like it is. This is from Spiegel Online International. Despite its best efforts, the science and technology sector is failing to attract girls, potentially undermining Germany's strength as a global export power. And I think what you took away from the film last night is that Americans always seem to think of themselves as the leader in a lot of things. We are definitely not the leaders anymore in terms of our ability, or we won't be, in our ability to keep up with computer science if we don't find more coders. The economy will literally stall. So what does tech look like? It kind of looks like this room. No offense. You're all gorgeous, wonderful. This is what it looks like. Do you want to turn volume up? Oh, yeah. Oh, we have no volume? Oh. Yeah. I can sing, I can. Is it a matter of just plugging in?
This is the tech thing, so right? Oh, we have a simple.
Stop the cameras.
Let's make it simple. That's gonna work.
Oh, we can do that.
Yeah, I think speech, right? This is gonna work.
Okay. Let's go back and test it.
It's one, yeah.
Okay, so that's really what tech looks like. And when that's part of the problem. Yep. Okay. All right, so Gloria Steinem. How many people know who Gloria Steinem is? Okay, so after this, you will all know who she is. So she's an activist. She's a feminist. Of course, one of my goals is to make feminism not a bad word. You guys can all be feminists too. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a feminist. It just basically defines that believe in inequality. So Gloria Steinem once said, "Women have always been an equal part of the past, just not an equal part of history." And this is true. This is especially true in computer science. And you saw in the film yesterday that we introduced Ada Lovelace, who was Lord Byron's daughter. She worked with Charles Babbage on the analytical machine. And then, of course, Grace Hopper. And Grace Hopper worked on the Harvard Mark I. She really was the woman who started the first compiler for programming language. So these are women that are really important in the movement of tech, but so many people don't even know who they were. She also coined the term bug, because you saw in the movie yesterday that they literally found a moth in the vacuum tube, her team did. And they took it and taped it to their log notes, which is what you see behind there, the actual log notes. So why is it important to have women as coders, women in tech? It's really not just a gender issue for the sake of it being a gender issue. This movement is not also just an ethnicity issue, and it's not for the sake of having, because human rights and people of color. But women equal diversity, and adding diversity to your team means improved innovation. So if you have a broader perspective, then you're going to be able to think of needs for apps that serve a greater breadth of humanity. There's also some science behind this. So how many people have heard of something called the female factor? Have you? Okay, so the female factor, this was an actual study that was done at Carnegie Mellon. And it was published in the Harvard Review in June of 2011. And it says that regardless of your individual IQ on a group of a team, so regardless of the individual IQ of this room right now, our collective IQ goes up because I'm here and I'm a woman. Just saying. So here are the graphics to prove that, if you can understand it. But it's fascinating, right? It's fascinating. So add a woman to your team, your productivity will go up. You add a woman to an investment team, and their investments increase and improve. Everybody comes to the table and steps up and gets smarter when women are part of the team. I find that fascinating, and it's science. So think about the potential for your company in that way. Yesterday, the film talked about some of what I call the boys' club blunders, and I say that lovingly and jokingly. We heard about the airbag. Did men think, well, we're going to do this just because we want to save men? Of course not. Of course not. It's just the fact that they didn't think outside of their world to think, wait, hang on a second. What happens if a woman's in the car? She has a different body structure, different frame, different weight, different proportions. Same thing with voice activation. It wasn't tested with a woman's voice. So women couldn't be heard, and then when it went to video tracking, women could be seen. Think about the millions of dollars that were spent on these devices, on this technology, and then they had to go back and redo it. So I think about some of the really, really amazingly successful apps. You think about Facebook, you think about Snapchat, think about all the dating apps like Tinder, and I don't use them, but think about those. These are wonderful, they serve a purpose, they have millions and millions of users. But if you had more diversity, if you had a greater breadth of thought at your group, what kind of apps could you develop that might be able to serve a greater breadth of humanity, right? What about apps that help serve hunger, like Food App, or clean drinking water? Low-income housing. Think about a woman that is a single mom with 3 kids, and she lives in low-income housing. If she needs to move and find a new place, what about an app that would put them together into common application and then be able to submit that way? Recycling, pollution control, these are all things that really could be helped. So this is something that I found that I thought that you would be particularly interested. It's apps for good. This is not just for girls, it's for boys too. Started in the UK by a Brazilian man. And here's what they say about what their goal is. Our goal is to transform the way technology is taught in schools, to empower students from all backgrounds to seize the opportunities of our digital age and create solutions to the problems they care about using technology. So Rodrigo Baggio, who's part of CDI, Apps for Good, was the founder and chairman of this project. I think it's really amazing. These are some of the apps that these kids have come up with. One was Chore Attack, so the way that you have chores in your family and keep the siblings from fighting and stuff, it's an app that helps with that. Pocket Money Pig is good. This actually, within your family, helps you remember who owes whom money. So my daughter owes me money for something, or if I owe her money for something, this is going to track it. I thought that was brilliant. Safe Nav is a really interesting one. So there are kids that live maybe in New York City or live in places where they're close to marginalized areas or areas that might be dangerous. And it will let you know a safe way to get home. So if there's police activity or drug activity or something going on in a certain area, it'll map a safe route for your teenager or your kid to get home, whether it's from the parks or from wherever they are. So the question is really, what's going on? Why aren't girls, young women, people of color pursuing computer science? Like you saw yesterday in the film, I think it has a lot to do with early exposure, a lot to do with stereotypes. It's a cultural problem. See if you can hear, this is Jocelyn Goldfein from Facebook.
Women don't enter computer science because they look at it and they see that there's so few women there, and it is surrounded with so many stereotypes and so much messaging that this is a place for men, that this is not a place for women, that this is not a field for women. And I think that set of beliefs is not sort of superficial. I think it starts very, very young. It starts with the books that we read our children. When I open Curious George and every scientist and doctor is a man, when the only female characters are nurses and moms, which are wonderful professions, but do not represent the full spectrum of all the things women can do. It sends a very one-sided message that this is a set of things that men are good at and women are not good at. And I think children internalize those beliefs early, and children want to conform.
Right, so if you don't see, if we're reading books to our children, if we're letting them watch cartoons, and you don't see women in leadership roles, women in scientific roles where they don't look nerdy or nerdy is good, right? Then they're not getting the message that this is something they can be. So there's the myth of the boy genius, that you have to be antisocial, that you have to want to sit in the basement and grok on algorithms until 3 in the morning, drinking Red Bull and eating stale pizza. And that's not really an attractive image or idea or stereotype for a young girl. So they don't feel comfortable. It's also called ambient belonging. Ambient belonging is your sense of belonging in a certain environment, and it's something that's sort of nuanced, but you can walk into a room and just feel whether you feel like you belong or not. I've been doing this long enough that I can walk into a room that's all men and I'm okay. I'm okay with it. But when I was 26 and I was working in the stock market in London and I walked through the bond traders floor, it was a little uncomfortable. Right? It was a different thing back then. And so I think when you're younger, that's part of what's happening. One interesting side note, Maria Clave, who was the president of, she was at Princeton, she's now at Harvey Mudd, you saw this yesterday. This company that was a recruitment company called her and said, we have a problem, we can't seem to hire any women. We can't hire them, even when we offer them jobs, they don't accept. Will you come back and tell us what we're doing wrong? So she walks in the front door of this company, and there are World War II posters all over. And they're in the south of the United States, and there's a container of cigarettes and of cigars on the table where she's waiting. She immediately walks in, and her sense is, I don't belong here. This isn't gender neutral. This is really old boys south, right? Old network. And so she said to the man, it's pretty simple. Change up your environment. Make it gender neutral. Make it more comfortable for more people. That was interesting. So here's what, some of you were talking about Goldilocks, about Debbie Sterling yesterday, and here's what she says about this.
Well, I think that engineering has a marketing problem. I think that growing up as a little girl, I certainly wasn't interested in it. I pictured engineers as nerdy guys who have no friends, who sit alone all day, grokking on algorithms, who are geniuses. And I think it's incredibly intimidating, especially for a girl who doesn't see other women in the field. And frankly, there just are few women.
So girls don't want to be the smart girl at a certain age. It's really sad. Girls and boys growing up are equally good. If not, girls are better at math and sciences early on just because of the way that our brains develop, right? Girls have, their frontal lobe develops more quickly. It's just the way it is. Then, of course, things catch up. But in 7th and 8th grade, when girls become aware of their sexuality, of the sort of relationship between girls and boys, they begin to get that most boys in the class are turned off, maybe it's because they're intimidated or something, by the girl being really smart. So my own son came home once, and his father said to him, wow, that Sophia is really cute. And my son said at age 14, oh, she is so annoying. She knows everything. She's always raising her hand. She knows everything. So what was that really saying? I mean, of course, I was on him right away. Like, that shouldn't be annoying. That's great. She's intelligent. You should raise your hand, too. But what's really happening there is that somehow his masculinity is being challenged because he feels somewhat intimidated by the fact that he doesn't know all the answers and this girl does. it's interesting. It's a matter of confidence for my son. It's also a matter of confidence for the girl. But when the girls pick up that the boys begin to feel this way, they stop raising their hand in co-ed education. And I think that's pretty sad. You saw this clip yesterday. I'm going to show it to you again because I think that it is funny and interesting and sad at the same time. I also think it shows how Hollywood is sort of perpetuating this stereotype.
On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was. It's October 3rd. 2 weeks later, we spoke again.
It's raining.
Yeah. But I wanted things to move faster, so I followed my instincts. Hey, I'm totally lost. Can you help me? But I wasn't lost.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what Miss Norbury was talking about.
It's a factorial, so you multiply each one by n.
Wrong. Is that the summation?
Yeah, the same thing.
Wrong. He was so wrong. Thanks. I get it now.
So is education the answer? What can happen? I think absolutely computer science needs to be incorporated into schools. There's a big issue here, and educators are very resistant for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is that there aren't many teachers of computer science. If you know programming, you're going to make a lot more money doing what you're doing and programming than you are working as a teacher in a school, especially in the United States, right? The teachers that are already tenured and that are already there are intimidated because they know that the 7-year-old or the 10-year-old is going to know more about computer science than they do. And that's a bad situation to be in if you're a teacher. So the other problem is that it takes a lot of money to bring computer science into schools. And in the United States, I was talking to the head of one school, and she said to me, well, what are we going to do, give up ancient European history? A lot of people in the tech movement in the United States would say, yes, who cares about Europe? I mean, we realize the importance of humanities, of ancient European history. I understand that. So it's not about, do we fit this into math? Do we fit this into the science department? Do we fit this into the foreign language department? It's about incorporating it into all the classrooms. It's about bringing it into science so that you can visualize your data set. It's about bringing it into history. It's about trying to find a way to bring it into all of the different classrooms. But that's going to take a concerted effort. It's going to take training on the teacher's part. It's expensive. When you get to the college level, the university level, it's a bigger problem. During the dot-com boom, a lot of colleges and universities invested a lot of money in their computer science department. And then with the bust, they stood there and nobody was coming into these classes. So they lost a lot of money. So they're a little bit gun-shy. They're concerned about now what are they going to do. Are these numbers true? Are there really going to be 1 million unfilled jobs? Their computer science classes are full right now, but they're full with men. So to bring more women in, they're going to have to make it bigger. Where do they get the money for that? They can't take it from one department. History department might have allocated resources or teachers that are tenured, meaning they're promised their jobs for the next 10 years. So it's a problem. And they're not necessarily incentivized to increase their computer science departments because it's a financial quagmire. It's a big financial problem. So what can we do to improve the system, to encourage more girls to get into computer science? This you saw yesterday, but I want to reiterate it. Most states do not have a teacher certification process for computer science teachers in the United States. Think about that. This is where Silicon Valley started, and we don't even have a way to certify our teachers with computer science.
Schools can be technology rich but curriculum poor. And that what is really needed is the curriculum and the teachers and the opportunities to experiment and explore with the technology.
Most students have no exposure to programming as a young person. And I think that if it was done well and part of the curriculum really really creating technology, innovating, giving them the tools that they actually can create things that are meaningful and relevant to their lives, could have these other really positive effects.
People think that it's a specific subject, when it's actually part of everything. It can be part of history, it can be part of English, it can be part of all of your subjects.
So let's say that we improve the pipeline, we get more women and people of color to get through universities with computer science degrees. Then what? Then your daughters end up in the startup culture. And this is also a problem. It's surprising to me that in this day and age there's as much sexism. Misogynistic is a very strong word, so I use it carefully. But it's happening, as you saw yesterday in the film.
The tech world and the tech culture will be so much better for everyone when there are more women in the room. The problem is it's hard to, like, with a good conscience, encourage more women to come into an environment that will, like, sexually harass them and not fund them.
And this is Julian.
A lot of sexism and racism in tech is actually latent. It's not malicious, but it's from those actions and those things being reinforced with their own success and with money.
So she has some strong views about it, of course, given what happened to her, but she's lived it. She's lived through it. Okay, so what can we do? Let's be positive about all this. What can we do? I think we need to make computer science mandatory in schools in the United States. The UK, it is now obligatory, I think starting in 2017. So it's a movement that really should happen all around. We need to disrupt sexist workplace culture. That's something that you can help do. A lot of you work on your own. Some of you work in offices. So maybe just pay attention to what's going on, to your coworkers, to what's happening. If there is 1 or 2 or maybe even 5 women in your space, just think about them a little bit more. Don't be afraid to stand up and defend. If a woman in your team says something and some man interrupts her or talks over her, he might not even realize he's doing it, but it happens all the time. So just put your hand up gently and say, hang on a second, I think, Maria was still talking. Just help out in that way. We need to change the stereotype of a coder, right? We need more female role models. I think Hollywood has a lot to do with this and can really help. Here's a clip of a film called, how many of you read to your children Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? Do you remember that book? Yeah, so it's a good one. Here's just a little clip of the movie that came out where I think they're beginning movement in the right way.
So, Jell-O.
Right.
It's a solid, it's a liquid, it's a viscoelastic polymer made of polypeptide chains. Would you eat it? I mean, it tastes good.
Why do you do that?
Do what?
Say something super smart and then bail from it?
When I was a little girl, I wore a ponytail, I had glasses, and I was totally obsessed with the science of weather. Other girls wanted a Barbie. I wanted a Doppler Weather Radar 2000 Turbo. And I still need these glasses, but I never wear them.
I'll bet you look great with glasses on.
Oh, I'm really
And on they go.
Oh. Whoa.
What?
Nothing.
Wait. It's a Jell-O scrunchie. And now, the reveal. Wow. I mean, you were okay before, but now, you're beautiful.
Anyway, so just a small example of how we can begin to try to change the stereotype to our young kids. So just a little bit, really quickly more about the movie. We premiered at Tribeca Film Festival, which for us was a really big honor. I had all these tickets to see other people's movies, and as soon as we had the first press screening, we got caught up in this media storm. I think I did 34 interviews in 4 days. It was crazy. It reached Europe. It was everywhere. So if you look on our website, which is codedocumentary.com, you can see some of that. It was Fast Company, BBC, CNN, Fortune, Forbes. It got everywhere, which was really exciting for us. Since then, we've been scrambling. We're a very small production company. It's sort of me and a couple friends, and then people that we've hired along the way. Congress reached out to us, mentioned that yesterday. The Department of State. We had the UN mission to Geneva has asked for a screening. The US mission to the UN in New York City. So we're getting it out as many places as we can right now. We're still on the film festival circuit. Companies are calling, Expedia, Facebook, big recruitment companies in the United States. We've done some screenings there. We did a screening at Electronic Arts. We did a screening at Warner Brother. So we're on the road doing as much as that. From here I go to Dell Women Entrepreneurship Network to talk about the gender gap. So it's exciting that people are interested in the movement. And I hope it's not just a fad. You know, I hope it's something that's lasting. The issue's not going to go away. So it's a matter of keeping this relevant and on people's minds and really getting help. And I really love this audience, and I hope that I can do more of this. Because I think that it really starts with you. It can really start with you. Anyway, thank you for listening, for being a good audience, and I'm open to questions if anybody has any, or comments.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions, but guys, raise your hands if you have questions. I'm sure. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, well, thank you for your talk. It was really inspiring. And my question is actually, is this actually coming from something more global than just the women? I mean, there are a couple of cases I've encountered in my life, which, for example, was this handicapped boy who really wanted to learn computer science, but he actually couldn't because all the classes were in places where he couldn't physically reach, and he kind of dropped out. Do you think this could be also connected to the same source, for example?
Yeah, I think that is such a great point. And the first person that brought that up to me was actually the man that did sound for us. And he used to work for Skywalker Sound. And he works at Berkeley Sound Artist. And he had spinal bifida as a child. So his entire life he's been in a wheelchair. And he first, when I said to him, I want you to do the job, will you bid it for me? He came back saying, you know, you didn't really mention handicapped, but coding could be an amazing thing for somebody that's restricted to a wheelchair, right? And he was right. We didn't mention that. It's hard to cover everything in a 78, 80-minute film. But I think it's an excellent point. And yes, right? It's about diversity all over. I mean, let's open this up and not make it about just the 25 to 35-year-old white man or Asian man. So I think that's a really good point.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? All right.
Yeah, more practical question. This is now in the film circuit. Let's say in my local 10,000 people town, I want to promote this on the local school. When is that going to be available that I can show this on any medium?
Okay, so good. So questions about distribution. And while we're on the film festival circuit, which is through November anyway, we know that we're in film festivals in the United States through November, we have to keep it contained. However, we are starting with what's called semi-theatrical through a company called Tug. So it will be available if somebody wants it, they can get on our website and find a way to get it. After that, so starting probably in January of 2016, we'll have an educational distribution. And then it'll be available to schools and communities worldwide. So we'll get it out there. And we're also cutting a 55 to 60-minute cut. We'll take out the foul language. We'll take out some of the heavier, more difficult parts of the Pax Dickinson, just a little bit. I want to keep the nuance there, but we'll take a little bit out to make it more gender or rather age appropriate. So, but they'll always have the option to show the whole thing as well. Yeah, so it will be available. Keep an eye on our website, codedocumentary.com.
All right. Anybody else? I have a question. Think about it, guys. I'm kind of a strong believer of quotas. I know you want is to be a meritocracy and not like a woman for the sake of a woman, but still, and especially given the strong believer in quotas, political party I belong here in Germany, if I would have to hire someone being pretty much the same level, I would rather hire a woman than a man, just for the sake of reaching equality in the next 50 years, because we have so much work to do. What do you think about this?
Well, I think now that you know that will also make you smarter, I think it's probably a good reason to go with that. Now you have another excuse to do it. I think all things considered equal, it can improve your company in a lot of ways, so hire a woman. I think that women want to be hired, I know that women want to be hired based on merit. It's not about checking off a box, being a quota. It's about hiring a woman because you know that she's going to improve your company. I mean, hire the right woman, hire, you know, a woman that is capable and that fits. It's all about the fit in your company. But I think that there are now more reasons than just a quota. You know, we all know that quotas don't really work.
What I'm saying though is like, I'm pretty sure if you interview 10 engineers, you're going to interview 9 guys and one woman. And so if they are all pretty much the same level, I'm not going to hire the woman if she's terrible at coding. But if they're pretty much the same level, I would rather take the woman, because I exactly know that in a lot of fields, not only computer sciences, we kind of have to fix the problem.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's great. I think especially being conscious now of this whole issue,
Yeah, one more question on this diversity. What is it? Is it that the diversity makes everybody smarter? Or is it just that the group gets smarter, not the individual?
Well, so there are two different things. There's the female factor. So that's not diversity necessarily, it's just gender diversity, right? So the study was done specifically on adding women to a group. So if you have a group of men, and let's just say you have 8 coders on a team, and they're all men, and you're able to test their IQ, and you know their individual IQs, so you know the sum of their individual IQs. If you add a woman to that team, and they start working together, the collective IQ, regardless of their individual IQs, regardless of the woman's individual IQ, the collective IQ rises.
That's cool.
It's fascinating. Yeah, you can read it for yourself. It's just Google it. It's called The Female Factor, or the Harvard Business Review, June 2011.
And it's not just because you added one more person, so of course math.
No, it's not just one more woman, because it's the collective IQ. Right. There's the question right there.
Microphone. 1, 2.
Hello, yeah. Regarding the whole hiring thing, just because you brought that up, one thing I've heard a lot is that men hiring and potentially hiring women, often, I think it's because of that you kind of look for reflections of yourself in other people that you try to hire.
Right.
That they kind of tend to go for the men or for some reason and things. Are there, like, I don't know, do you have tips or something like how to work against these biases, or when interviewing people to hire? I mean, you mentioned yesterday that one would probably, for one thing, make sure there's a woman on the team. So
yeah.
Anything else? Or?
So that's a really good question, and it's something that a lot of people wonder about, right? How do I hire a woman, and how do I, as Nate says, who was the co-founder of Airbnb, he said the hardest thing that he did was to hire the first woman, because you want the woman to stay there, right? So you've got to make your environment safe and comfortable place for a woman to work. And once you have one woman that's been there for 2 years or whatever, it's going to be easier for her to try to bring in other women. And if you have a woman on your team, bring her into the interview panel. Have her interview some of the candidates as well. Because a woman's going to feel more comfortable coming in knowing that there's another woman there that's happy. So that's the first thing that I would say. Also, think about your interview questions. Dropbox, when Dropbox was first interviewing, when they were founded, what was that, 10 years ago or something like that, maybe 8 years ago, Dropbox had all these really strange questions. They thought they were being super hip and cool, but some of the questions that they were asking their candidates were so specific to, sci-fi and to, Star Trek, and just completely off. Really, that already it alienated women. They were asking questions assuming that you had to have a certain interest and knowledge in order to become that member, on that team. And I understand why that makes you feel safe, because you want to bring people. If I'm interviewing people and somebody's a runner and she grew up in California, I'm going to relate to her, I'm going to understand. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't look at the other person that grew up in, the East Coast and is not athletic at all, or whatever, right? So, but it would help if I had somebody else interviewing also to give a different perspective. Socioeconomic is important too. Get somebody that comes from a different socioeconomic background, and that'll help bring on that sort of diversity as well.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to comment that if they would have asked me a question about sci-fi, I would have failed totally. But if they ask me anything about ponies, I'm pretty good at it. So, so it's probably doesn't have anything to do with being a guy or a girl. It's just like I don't watch any TV series, for example, right. Which like 99% of the computer guys that I know are totally crazy about. Go ahead, Uli. You have another question?
No, I just have.
I thought you just wanted to hand back the mic. All right, so I'm going to have a question, the last one, because then we're going to take a break. Yep. You mentioned a little bit about the craziness you've been running into, all those festivals and the press and all and whatnot, and you're still busy because you're going to have to leave us in the next hour or so. So what's next for you? I mean, in terms of festivals, meeting big companies as well, and so on and so forth.
So from here I go to Berlin, and I'll be in Berlin for 4 days, I think, and I'll be at the Dell Women Entrepreneurship Network, so I'll be mainly women from all over the world, I think, and I'll be running 2 panels, or on 2 panels. And then we go to Washington, D.C. on the 7th to do the screening for Congress and for the State Department. We're going to be at the Mill Valley Film Festival in California. That's a very old, well-established, great film festival. We're screening at Expedia and Facebook, and honestly, I don't even know. It's my whole calendar is booked till
Because I think
November.
like screening at companies, like big companies like Facebook and Dell and so on and so forth, is like very important.
Yeah, we have a screening at Ericsson, a screening at Intel. We have screenings, and that's one way that we're raising money to, to afford these. I mean, this trip is different because Dell's paying for it, and Dublin was paying for it, but Inspire Fest was where I was in Dublin. But for some of these, like when we go back to Washington, D.C., it's government, they're not going to pay for it, right? So, and the educational cut is something that we need to pay for. So what's great is that because it's not available, I can say to conferences, that's great, $5,000 plus travel. I can tell Facebook, who let us in the doors but didn't help fund the project, because I didn't want the companies that were in the film to fund the project. I didn't want it to look like I was being, the only exception to that is Ericsson, but she talks about what happened when she worked at Microsoft, the Clippy part, so that I felt was safe there. But we have IBM was suddenly interested. I don't know if they know that Dell's on our team or not, but that's okay. As I talk about it's about just collaborating. So we're raising money for that. So to Facebook, they're paying $10,000 plus travel and all that for it. But that's nothing to a company like Facebook. That's nothing. I should charge twice that.
So it sounds like this talk was brought to you by Dell. Thank you. Thank you for traveling, Robin. Yesterday we had Microsoft as well in the talks. So, thank you, Robin. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you because we're speaking about companies. My own company, 7 Principles, which is paying for all this thing. Well, I mean, you guys are paying a little bit, obviously. And if it wasn't for 7 Principles, I wouldn't have you this year. So thank you to them. But but first and foremost, a major round of applause for Robin. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take a break for like 10 minutes, and yeah, just go outside, get some fresh air. The weather is awesome today, so enjoy it.
Thank you so much to you.